Welcome to another edition of Confident Real Estate. I'm your host, JC. Today we are coming to you on site at our newest investment property. I just did a video about this property that I will leave the link to down below so you can get a full tour and see what this property is all about and learn a little bit more about this particular investment. That link will be in the description below. But for today, somebody messaged me and asked me what it took for me to get over my worries and some of the things that consistently cause analysis paralysis and a lot of new real estate investors. For me, as an attorney, one of the bigger issues was liability. And a lot of people share that. There's the financial aspect of getting involved in investing in real estate, but there's also, what do I do if somebody sues me? What do I do if I have a nightmare tenant? And what can I do to protect myself? And in today's video, I'm going to show you some things that are simple tips that in the eyes of the law and the court in most jurisdictions will make your life significantly easier, limit your exposure to risk and liability significantly, and give you a great peace of mind to sleep at night. Now, again, I am a real estate attorney, but I'm not your real estate attorney. You should always seek the advice of not only a real estate attorney in your area, but also your local insurance consultant that's working with you to get insurance on your property like you would get insurance on your own home. So we're going to cover some of those things in this video. Stay tuned to the end because I'm going to give you some unique tips that I've learned through experience that I think will help you tremendously. Let's get started. First, off the bat, you know I'm going to ask you to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm and also hit subscribe if you're not yet part of this Confident Real Estate growing family, because I'm really trying to give you guys a lot of great information that isn't really covered on a lot of other YouTube sites, and I hope you appreciate that. And if there's things you want to see, leave me a comment down below so I can do a video on it and make sure I cover the topic that's of interest to you. All right, let's get into it. Liability issues that may keep you up at night if you're a property owner. Things that you can do to limit your exposure to liability and the idea that a nightmare tenant could sue you or make your life miserable. There are simple factors that will help you sleep at night. The first one is going to be securing your property. You want to make sure that it's not easy for somebody to break into your property. And that doesn't mean you have to go out and get an industrial alarm system, but it does mean that you should immediately change the locks when you buy the property so you know you're the only one that has copies of the keys, and then make copies for your tenants. But you've also got to make sure that the types of locks you're using are locks that it's reasonably expected will keep people out. Like, for instance, if you're going to the exterior of your property, you should have commercial storeroom locking doors. These commercial storeroom locks that are commercial grade will lock from the outside automatically, so that if your tenant shuts the door and if they're responsible to lock the door once they come in, they may have kids. A lot of multifamily properties that are really homes, people walk in and they lock the door behind them like you do in your own home. But if it's a right off the street entrance into the property and somebody has a kid that forgets to lock the door behind them, well, then anyone can open the door and come right in. A commercial storeroom lock is hard to break, has a very fortified strike plate. You can't just knock it open, and it will lock automatically from the outside. I also put deadbolt locks on those front exterior doors as well, and my tenants are pretty good about shutting it because they know it's in their mind already that when that door shuts, it locks, and that reminds them they should also do the deadbolt lock at the end of the day. But at least, at the very least, one of the doors, one of the locks will lock automatically and keep the door shut, and it's a commercial grade lock that'll protect them from the outside. Similar to the exterior lock, I also like to put commercial storeroom locking mechanisms on doors to the basement, because really my tenants shouldn't be in the basement unless they're going to access the storage rooms or bike rooms that I build out in the basement dead space that add value to my property. A lot of my tenants can store their Christmas decorations and luggage downstairs in the basement, store their bikes on a bike rack in a bike area downstairs in the basement, where I use up dead space to add extra value to the property. But they only get one key and they have to sign a rider to the lease that really alleviates and waives any damage claims against me for their use of those things that they have an option to use but don't have to use in the basement. And because of that, I also make sure that I have those same self-locking, automatic locking locks, storeroom locks on those doors that lead to the basement area so the kids cannot access them. You need to have the key, and that means the adult who has the key is responsible for overseeing that key. Likewise, I also make sure that any dark areas in the property, like the basement that we were just discussing, have motion sensor lights that activate with motion in front of them. I also have actual lights that people can flick a switch to turn on, but I also have those motion sensor lights so that there's never a risk of someone saying, oh, the light was burned out, or I, didn't flick the switch and I fell down the steps and it was already dark. So when people enter my property, when they step into the entrance area of the property, lights go on. When they walk into the front vestibule of the property to go to their apartment, there's a light that's there, but if something burns out, there's a motion detector light that goes on. And when they go to the basement to access the bike room and storage areas, the light goes on. So if anybody ever claims that it was too dark and they slipped and fell, well, you know what? There are motion sensor lights that I check on a regular basis, and my colleagues who help manage the property check on a regular basis, and we make sure the batteries are fresh. So that's never going to be a claim someone can make against us. The next one should be obvious, and that is smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. You're probably going to be required to have them by law based on what the law is in your jurisdiction where you're investing in a property. But you always should have smoke and fire detectors, and they're usually required by law. And of course, in line with that, if there is an actual small fire at the property, you don't want the tenants to run out the door and call 911 and let the fire grow. So I always make sure to provide fire extinguishers in the kitchens, in the laundry room, and in any major area of the property near the bedrooms. There's at least 2 or 3 throughout each apartment so that a tenant has access and can easily put out a small fire before it grows and burns my property down, and I have to make an insurance claim and wait till it's fixed before I can get tenants back in to pay me rent every month. That defeats the purpose. Of course, the best way to protect your investment and yourself from liability is to make sure that your lease is thorough. Don't just get a standard boilerplate lease for the area that you live in or have investment property in and hand that to the tenant and think you're covered. You should have additional riders. If you are providing, like I do, storage area or a bike area in the basement, you have a rider that's attached to the lease that the tenant signs that says they understand that if their property in the basement gets damaged, it is not your problem. It is on them because they are waiving the right to sue you for damage to their property that they left in the basement. You're giving them the option to put it there, but it's not necessary that they do. So if it gets damaged because there's a flood, that's not going to be your problem. You put that in the rider to your lease. You also want to make sure if you have children, window guards. In the area where I have investment properties and where I live, it's required by law. If a child is under the age of 11, the tenant has to notify you so you can put in window guards to prevent a child from accidentally, God forbid, falling out a window. So make that the onus on the tenant to tell you if they have children under age 11 that are going to be living in the property. Give them that form and put that in the rider as part of your lease. Also make sure that if you have an older property that was built before, the 1960s, that there may be a trace of lead behind several inches of paint at this point that have been painted over. You never know. Just cover your rear end and give them the federal lead paint warning pamphlet that you can easily go and download off of the internet. It just covers you a little bit more. These are the kinds of things you need to think about when it comes to smoke detectors and alarms in your house. I actually add in my rider that I have the ability to come in and change the batteries and test them once every 90 days. And that also gives me the right to come into the property and take a look around and make sure the tenants are treating my property correctly. So those are things you want to add into the lease. Talk to local people in your area who are investors. Trust me, people will talk to you about what they do because it's local real estate meetup in groups for investors. These are the kinds of things that you get out of those groups that are super beneficial to you. Talk to the brokers in your area. Get some form leases that they may have. It all helps, and you put it together and you finalize your own form of lease. And of course, talk to an attorney if you feel that you need to in your jurisdiction to make sure you have a lease that really protects you. Now, I promised you at the end of this video I was going to give you a tip that would be life-changing to you, and it really is so simple. Insurance. You're going to get property insurance for the property, and if you're buying the property in your own name rather than an LLC or some corporate entity setup, then you really want to make sure that you have maximum liability coverage in at least $1 million if you can. But on top of that, you have umbrella coverage insurance for yourself. So if you're buying the property in your own name, you have $1 million of liability coverage. You also have maybe $1 million or $2 million or more of umbrella coverage, and you add the properties that you invest in to your umbrella policy with whichever insurance carrier is holding your umbrella policy. And that'll give you 1, 2, 3 million based on how big your liability coverage for the property is and your umbrella policy. That'll give you that much coverage. So if somebody sues you, you're not coming out of pocket until the judgment award goes over $3 million. And that is obviously highly unlikely and would take a real egregious and malicious act and gross negligence on your part to have a court award that against you in most cases. Again, legal disclaimer, although I'm an attorney, I'm not your attorney, and please check with your own attorney and your insurance consultant. But the key trick is this. You don't want to have just your insurance. You want your tenants to have insurance that covers you. What you do is you make them get renter's insurance. If the policy, usually it's like $100 to $150 for the year. It covers all of their property that they put on the policy in their own name in the property, and it can cover things like personal injury from slip and falls and other incidents that they have in the property that they're renting from you. And you make sure that in your lease and your riders, you require that renter's insurance and that you make sure you are named as an additional insured party. If you put that in the lease and they spend the $100 or so for the year to get the renter's insurance and name you as an additional insured party, if there's a claim, it's going to go through their insurance first before it ever touches your insurance, and then it would have to go through their insurance and your insurance before it ever comes to your own pockets. But speak to your insurance consultants about how best to go about that and what you should be requiring in your area, what's customary and what you want to make sure is in there so that you're covered and that your renters are covered on their own property and that they're covering you as well. That is worth all its weight in gold. Even if you want to pay for the policy for the tenant, do it because it saves you and it gives you peace of mind so you can sleep so much better at night. Okay, that's it. I appreciate you watching this all the way to the end. I hope this really puts you at ease and you got something out of it, especially with that insurance situation. It will really make a night and day difference in your life and in your investment practices. And of course, if you want to see the rest of this property that I'm shooting this video from, then click that link below and take the investment property tour that we previously posted. Again, I appreciate you watching all the way to the end. Smash that like button if you didn't already. Smash that subscribe button and join us in the Confident Real Estate Growing family. I appreciate it. Until next time, take care.